Welcome to SourceCAD. In this Autodesk Inventor tutorial series, you'll learn all about Autodesk Inventor right from scratch. Now, this video is made by Jarle Oudalstoel, who is a senior designer working with Autodesk family of products like Inventor and AutoCAD. This tutorial will start with the basics of user interface tour, then you'll learn about project files, working with sketches like line, circle, and square. Then you'll learn about selection set, dimensioning, constraints, and construction lines. After that, we'll start with solid modeling features like extrude, iProperty, cut, intersect, revolve, and hole features. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with suppress feature, cleaning browsers and parts. Now, after finishing this Autodesk Inventor tutorial series, you will be able to make and modify your own 3D parts in Autodesk Inventor. You can also get a verifiable certificate of completion completely for free for finishing this particular tutorial series, and I'll share with you how you can do that later in the video. So keep watching to know about that. So with that, let's get started.
In this course, we're going to take you through creating a part, setting up a project, and working on some of the features in Autodesk Inventor. We're using Autodesk 2024 at this point, and so let's dive into it. Now, as you can see the screen, I've already opened my 2024 Inventor, and this is usually the screen you'll come to, and the first thing you might want to notice is the project you're working on. Now, there are some file types we'll come across here. The most used one is an IPT file, which is the part file. Now, there is a project file you want to pay attention to, and it isn't obvious in this window right here, but if you go to your little three dots and you go to settings, this is your project file. Now, the project file is used to keep control of your files. Inventor works with multiple files. You have multiple parts you're creating for each project, and you put these together in an assembly and in the drawing and so on. And so the first thing you want to do when you start a new project is click these little three dots and go to your projects. And I'm going to click New. Now, this is a single user project, so I'm going to leave that one checked. The next step is to give this project a name. I'm just going to name it Part Essential, and then choose a location for this project. So again, it's a file that you put on your hard drive, and in that file you might create subfolders, but this is where Inventor is going to automatically suggest you save your files. Inventor will also tell you if you're going outside of the project. So, like I said, next thing, choose a location. So I'm going to go my hard drive. Let's go down to S. That didn't go very well. There we go. SourceCAD, here you are. And right now I don't have a folder in here, so I'm going to create a new one and just name that folder the same thing, right? Part Essential. That's where I'm going to house my project. Now, next step here is if you have, and this is something we'll cover later, if you have libraries, so if you have folders where you have standard parts, this would list out in previous projects. So you can take that, move it over to your current project if you want to. For this case, I'm just going to hit finish. And that's your project. Now, what you want to notice is which one has the checkbox on it. That is the active project. That's the folder Inventor's going to work in. And you can double click and switch between the two. Default, you'll have a default project here. But I'm going to leave mine as it is, and then I'm going to click done.
Now, before we move further into the video, I'd like to share with you Autodesk Inventor Essentials course, which is completely free for you. Now, this Autodesk Inventor Essential course is essentially this particular video is split into chapters and different topics. Also, when you sign up for the free course, you can download all the lesson files that we have used in this tutorial series from there. And when you finish that course, you'll get a certificate of completion from SourceCAD. Now, the best part, it's completely free. And there is no condition. You can just sign up right now and start learning, and the access will remain available to you for lifetime. So click the link in the description of this video or also in the pinned comment to sign up for the course right now. Now back to the video.
So now we are ready to go. We can start creating parts. And so the part file is the IPT file. So I'm going to click on new down here. And here are some templates. Now this comes with Inventor installed, and here you see we got two parts, two IPT files. One's a sheet metal and a standard part. This is the one we're going to focus on here. So a standard part, I'm just going to click create, and again you might notice down here it says project file. This is the project file. So I'm going to say create, and this opens up the Inventor software, if you will, fully, with a ribbon on the top, which we have in most software these days, a menu on the side, which we call the browser, and the browser will contain all the features we're going to use. It will contain the sketches we're going to do, and so on. So you have your browser, like I said, on this side right here. You have a ribbon on top, and this has different functions, a little bit depending on what you're doing. So this is what it's going to come into default. Here you got your features, your extrude, your revolve, your hole. We've got some work features, we got some patterns, surface, and so on. You got different tabs for sketch. This isn't really relative until we do a sketch, and you'll see it switches automatically. Annotation, you can do annotation in the drawing if you want to. Tools is one you might want to pay attention to. You got some document settings and so on. We're not going to dive into these real deep right now. The other part of this window you want to pay attention to is on this side, you've got a little view cube. And so this one, and they'll be clear once we have some things on our window, but this is, and you might notice this icon down here turns as I'm clicking these different corners. It is basically flipping your portion, your part around. And so again, when we get things on our screen, it makes a little bit more sense. Personally, I use my scroll wheel to pan, and I roll, I zoom. Again, we can't see anything right now, but again, I'll repeat this. But you also find these commands right here on this. Here's your pan command. You can click that. You get the little hand. You use your left mouse button to click. I'm going to hit escape to cancel out of it. You have a zoom, which you can hit this little underneath, and there's your zoom, zoom all, zoom window, and zoom selected. Zoom all, or you can double click your scroll wheel, does the same thing. There is also a 3D orbit, or free orbit if you will. Again, this makes a little bit more sense once we have things on the screen. Notice the icon down in the corner is turning, the view cube is turning, and so again I'm going to hit escape. And there's one we call look at. Again, will make more sense once we have things on the screen. And the last one here is how it is portrayed as a wireframe, shaded with edges, whichever one you want to, how you want to display your model. There are some more commands you can turn on if you want to. One might be visual style or projection, if you will. You can go from a perspective or a orthographical, which is what we are right now. Perspective is more so the disappearing type thing. But you can add, if you find yourself going to use this often, or you can take off if you don't use any of these. You can reduce it however you feel like. Now, the other one I want to point out here is the quick access toolbar. That's the one on the top here. And I've got more turned on than you normally would have. But there is a little pull down menu right here. And here you can see all the things you can turn on in this quick access toolbar. And so I have most turned on already. And so this is just a personal preference, if you will, but you can find them here. Now, let's get some lines on our window here. Let's make some sketches, if you will. And so one of the things you might want to pay attention to with that is, well, how do I get started? Well, this is the button, Start a 2D Sketch. Once you click that, you will see this little, these are the origin plane is what they're referred to, and you will find them in the browser in here. These are the sketch planes you can use, and you can add more work planes if you will after. But what it's looking for, and as it says, select plane to create sketch. Or it can be, as you get your first sketches done, your first extrusions done, you can sketch on the planes or on the surfaces of the objects you've already made. Now, right now, I'm just going to click the XY plane. And what it does is put you in sketch mode. And you might notice we went from 3D modeling to sketch. And so this here is, it has a point right here, origin point, which is this one right here. Should you find yourself, I'm going to delete it on purpose, it's not here. It is very useful because you want to tie your sketch to something. We want to go for something called fully constrained. And so should you find that I deleted it, I can click this project geometry and click it out again so that I have access to it. Just a quick little, so we don't necessarily fall off right off the bat. Now, the group of commands we're going to look at is line. You can use the shortcut key L if you want to. But line, I can click a start point and start dragging out, and you'll see you have little helpers, little input boxes, if you will. So the one, if I typed in a number right now, it would be the length. As you can see, that number. If I use my tab key, I can input the angle if I want to. Or you can just drag and click. You don't have to do anything. If you do, so if I just drag and click, it'll continue. And it's adding, you might notice it's adding these 2D constraints. And so as I'm going straight down, it's going to suggest, you might notice the upside down T. Before that, you might also notice there's a line and then a line again, two parallel lines, and then this little squiggly lines underneath. That is the horizontal constraint. So the first line is set to horizontal. And you can see as I get into, I'm almost at 90. It's going to be a little magnetic, a snap to it, if you will. And it's going to show you the perpendicular symbol. So I can go down. And if I keep going, it's going to give me perpendicular again. Or I can, if I want it to be parallel, just to be, I can kind of just go hover this line for a second. As I come back down, you'll see it gets me the parallel symbol. Now I'll show you why I know it is parallel. And then I'm going to go and watch what happens here. It gets a little magnetic. See how that little dotted line goes up to my first point? Because it's going to assume this is what I want to do, which it is. So I'm going to click there and I'm going to close it. Now you can see it stopped because the other 3 times I ended up in a click point where there was nothing else. This last one ended where there was something. So the line command kind of stops itself. It doesn't automatically continue. Now I can start a new one if I want to. But here we have a box. And I'm going to hit escape to cancel out. You can right click and say finish 2D sketch. Or just say OK to stay in sketch. But be done with this for now. Now we have our lines, and I intentionally drew it around my origin point. This will become clear here in a little bit. But that's line, and so I'm going to pop right into circle. And I'm just going to, again, here you can see when I'm using my scroll wheel, I'm zooming in and out. I'm rolling it. I don't know if you can hear the clicks. But this is where you could also use this here zoom. Use your left mouse button to zoom in and out. This is, I might say, more accurate. You can see it kind of skips quite a bit if I use my mouse wheel. But I'm just going to zoom out. I'm going to hit escape. And then, like I said, I'm pressing down my scroll wheel to go from side to side. Now I want to go on to the next kind of sketch tool, if you will. It's circle. And this is very typical. You start with the center point and you drag out, and that gives you diameter in the first initial. You can right click and say I want to input radius instead. All depends on how you want to input the number. If you want to input a size, now I'm going to say diameter, but I'm just going to drag out. It doesn't really matter. And a circle has been made. It's nothing very particular about this. And then let's go through and kind of, instead of drawing lines to make a square, we can look at this one right here. And this is, you draw a top corner, and again I can use my tab key to go between the height and the length, or I can just place it. And this kind of, you might notice it gives me all the constraints and everything. Now if I hit OK, and if you now look at, these are purple lines. So right now this is the schematic I've set up. This is the view style, or the viewing I have on mine right now. It's a better contrast for videos. So this isn't necessarily the color scheme you'll come into when you start Inventor. But what I want you to notice is we're going to start putting some dimensions on these things. And what I want you to notice is how these things change color. So as we start adding dimensions, and so what I want you to notice is down here it says 11 dimensions needed. That means for this to be fully constrained, fully defined, I need 11 dimensions. Now let's just kind of scale this back a little bit, and that's just by, I'm going to click up here and I'm going to hold, kind of drag out a window. That gives me a selection. I can select these objects. And so you might notice there's two different colors. And this is fence selection, or it only has to be partially inside on these dotted lines. And this is window selection, means the object has to be fully inside. Now I just want to get rid of, so let me just show you here. This gives me these two lines because this isn't fully inside. Now if I go across everything, of course it's all going to be inside. If I go the other way, crossing selection, you might think, well, you won't get the circle now, but because it's somewhat inside, it will. And all I want to do is just delete these things right now. So notice my number went down. I need 4 dimensions. And so in order to dimension things, you need to click D, or you can click this here. Shortcut is D. As you might notice on these help menus, it says general dimension and it has a D in parentheses. That is the shortcut key. But if I click this line and I drag up, and I'm just going to leave it, I can put in a different number. Well, let's do that. 2 inches. That drives the size of the line. So when you start dimensioning, these sketches grow. You draw 1 to 1. And you might notice it went down. Now it only needs 3 dimensions. So I can click the line, and my dimension is still active. Or I can click this one and this one, and it gives me the other way. And so this here pops up right away, the edit dimension. And let's just do 1.5. And then I'm going to use my scroll wheel to zoom out. Now it says it needs 2 dimensions, which is kind of strange. Well, that's okay. So that means this one needs it. Nope, that will over constrain, and you can do that if you need the number. I'm just going to mention that, but nope, that's not what we need. What it needs, it's to be tied back to the grid behind the scene, if you will. And this is where this center point comes in. So I can click this center point and to this line. I don't want to actually catch the middle. I want to catch the line there, and I can put in a number. But notice also two of the lines change color. That means they're fully defined. They know everything about themselves. And so I'm going to go this top one down to the same center point. And these are fully defined as well. Now fully constrained. Might notice it says so right here, fully constrained. And I'm going to click finished. Now with that, I have a fully constrained sketch. It's fully defined. Now you can click the lines, and these little yellow dots is the connection points between the two lines. And then I have my perpendicular right here. Now let's put a scenario, and I'm going to delete this one here. I'm just clicking this, deleting it. Now it says it needs a dimension, but it's kind of which dimension? And it may not always be super clear, right? And then I would suggest, and now I know, right? I know which one it is. But start to, like these lines that didn't change color, see which way you can drag it. If you want to try to find out, what can I do? And it becomes somewhat obvious. Oh, it's this one. And so this is where the constraints come in. And there's a little group of little buttons right here. And I've kind of mentioned the parallel one right here. Perpendicular is this one. And then coincident is what it's called. And that is this little yellow dot you see. This here, these two. And notice the symbols and the symbol right here. So I can put in the constraint here. This one to this one. And say okay. Now we kind of took away our little circle. And so let's get that back. I'm just going to scoot over. And I'm going to put my circle. And as you're drawing, you might know, okay, this is 2 inches. So if I put in 2 inches and click enter or hit enter, it actually adds the dimension right away. So I don't have to do that. It does the same just to show you for line. And I'm going to hit L, which is the shortcut key for line. If I draw out and I put in the number 2 inches and use the tab key, 0 degrees is fine. If I hit enter, it's going to add the dimensions right away. So you can draw and get your dimensions on as you go. And so a little trick here, because it's not always going to be zoomed into what you're going to do. So if you know you're going to draw something that's 50 feet, just to be exaggerated about it, a little trick is to actually draw a line, and 50 FT is feet. IN is inches, MM is millimeters, CM is centimeters if you want to. But if you do that, you'll get a line. And this is, I'm exaggerating, but to kind of show you, to get you started correctly. Double click your scroll wheel, and that's apparently 600 inches. So you can kind of get yourself going on the right foot. I'm going to crossing select this. So right to left, then I don't have to select the whole thing. Now I want to double click my scroll wheel again and zoom into the things we have. So I'm going to delete this here again. Now this circle still needs to be either tied back to this origin point, or you can use this little padlock. You might notice it says 2 dimensions needed. Usually that would be from this up and in. Well, I can also just lock this point, and that becomes a fully defined circle. Now, if I want to change these numbers, all you got to do is double click. Then I go to 3 inches, and the circle grows. And so there are times, so let's back up a little bit. If I don't want this padlock here, I can click that and delete it. Or if you kind of, what constraints do I have? You can click the F8 button, and the symbols will show up. And like I said, these yellow dots indicate what you have as a as the coincident one. But there you can see the padlock. I can click it, I can delete it, and I'm back. So there might be times, and you might have heard some referred to as object lines or contour lines, but there are times when you need a help line, if you will. And what I mean by that is, one, I don't want Inventor to confuse these edges here and this one with what I'm about to draw up. So let's just potentially, I'm going to go from, and I'm going to start here right at this center point. Just tie myself right into it. You can see it's got a big green dot. That means it's going to coincidentally constrain to that. And I'm going to go a little weird, but just to show, and I'm going to go to this center point. Now, I don't want Inventor to, or the next guy, to misunderstand what these lines are. So what I want to do is actually select them again, and I'm going to click a different line type, just a construction line. It's a help line. It's just to have, I need to tie in because I'm going to dimension these, for instance. Now, I didn't want to draw it along this line right here, and I'm going to get the constraints in, right? So I'm going to make this one, I want to make it horizontal, which is this one right here. And notice the help line, because I want to mention, it's not always that what you're looking at is the horizontal line. So you might have to do, and again, notice the line going up and down. But in this case it is. So I'm going to say this line is horizontal. And, well, let's hit escape to get out of it. I'm going to move this circle up, F9, to turn that off again, turn off the constraints. And then I'm going to drag this up somewhere around here. I'm going to just put a dimension on it. So I'm going to hit D, dimension, and I can either have it be I want to say perpendicular, or I can call aligned. So if I right click now, I can say I want it to be aligned, and you can see what that does. It follows the line instead of being vertical. In my case, I can set it to horizontal as well, which would be that distance. So you can kind of, if something is not 100% up, down, or horizontal or vertical, you can enforce it, or actually want it to be aligned, if you will. So let's just make it 1.5 inch. And then I know it's aligned, but I'm still going to put in the perpendicular between this one and this one. And so it still wants one dimension. So let's see, what can we do? Well, we can go in and out of here. So one last one, that one. Now let's just do 4.5. Now I got it fully constrained. But you can kind of see the differences. These are contour lines. This is what I'm going to extrude, and this is what I'm going to extrude. I don't want someone to confuse a line that I needed to place something else. So that's where these different line types, and normally when you draw, the construction line is always on. Sorry, the normal line. Construction line is not on. Should you, by the scenarios, I turn this on, I go to my circle and select the circle, turn it off, and you're back to normal. So if you should pick the wrong one, it's not a big deal. Now we have done some dimensioning, and we've done some other stuff. So let's peek another little thing that comes into something we would like to do. Now, if you have, let's just do a rectangle, and I'm not going to do anything particular. I'm just going to place it, and I'm actually going to dimension it right away. So I'm going to go 2.5, use my tab key, and use 1.5. Hit enter. And here it is. Oh, it's a construction line, right? I didn't turn it off. Okay, so I'm going to select the whole thing, turn that off. Now it's a normal one. Now, there are times when, let's potentially say this is a cylinder, right? This is the meat of a pipe, for instance, and the center line of the pipe is down here, which I know the ID of this pipe is 2 inches. So what I want to do is actually draw another line. Just, I can kind of line myself up. It doesn't really matter, just to make it look fine. Oh, I keep This keeps staying on. You might notice that. I keep forgetting. If you turn it on, it stays on. Remember to turn it off. But what I want to do here, I'm going to again turn this off. So it's a normal line. But if I dimension from this one to this one, it's going to be, it's like I said, it's a 1.5 inch diameter of this cylinder I'm going to make. I can make it a little better, a little easier for myself. And personally, I like to use the numbers I'm being given. So if I select this line, there's another type that's called center line. This one, if I dimension, clicking D, from this to this, Inventor understands that this is a center line, so I can input the diameter if I want to. And this is very useful and might be even more useful when we come to the first thing we're going to look at after this is extrude. And then we're going to look at revolve. And so with that, I'm going to make some a little bit more functional sketches at the time, but I just wanted to kind of show you this so that you might want to use the different line types for what you're going to do. And basically these are the 3 ones. You can actually make this, it's a center line, and you can make it a construction line as well. It doesn't, just makes it thinner. And you can turn them again both back off, and it doesn't change this, or turn it back on. Inventor will never understand this as a contour line, as it will these others. I want to say solid lines. You might think of this as a hidden line, if you will, in technical drafting terms. Now let's just back it off a little bit. I'm going to delete some of these sketches right here using crossing selection. That kind of gets me everything. Delete this one. Now what we have, we've done our sketch, and I want to mention, make them as simple as possible. Make it square, and we're going to use features that's better. But if I click finish sketch, and you can see it kind of rotates in, it gives me a 3D perspective again. Now we're going to do an extrude. And when you start the extrude command, you don't have too many options, and it doesn't really make much sense me saying options right now because there'll be some if you do a next one. But what you're getting, and you might notice it automatically picked my profile because there is only one, hence keep your sketch simple. And it is going to go one direction. It's going to give me 1 inch right now. That's fine. If I want to go the other way, I can click this one, and you notice it flips. If I want my work planes to be in the middle, which is something you really should consider, these work planes that are right here are very, very useful. Easily forgotten because they're inside a folder. But if I want it in the middle, that means my number, and you can kind of notice where this blue tinted, that's my sketch surface, and it goes equally both ways. And then the other option is, I got 2 different distances. I can go 6 inches one way and 1 inch the other way if you want to. Now I'm just going to go straight up 1 inch. I'm going to click OK. And there is your first extrude. Now with an extrude and with Inventor, you've got materials, and you got something called iProperties. And so I want to mention this right now. In iProperties, the most common way is to right click right here and go to iProperties, or again in mine, I have turned it on. It is usually not there when you install, but you have iProperty in your quick access right there, and it's this button right here. That's one of the ones I would turn on right away. But iProperties is something we're going to peek at. And so in here, the one we're going to look at is one, the description. What is this? Well, this is a box, and we could put in the size of it. We can give it more description. The reason I'm pointing out this one is because this is what is inputted into the bill of material when you get your drawing. So you can add a bunch of information here. if you want to. We're also going to go to physical, and right now it is set to generic. Now we've got a bunch of different materials here. Polypropylene, PVC piping, and it gives you a mass, a weight. And we've got some, let's go up. We've got some, I don't want generic again. We got lead, for instance. That gives you a mass. Let's just put steel. And there's a mass. You can see the volume and so on. I hit apply, and you might notice it actually changes color because to indicate that it's steel. But utilizing those two particularly, this one here, describe what you have, put in the size of it, whatever you want, and setting the right material. Now, you don't have to go into iProperties to set the material. It's also right here. Now, material, this is what Inventor comes with, and these might be a little generic, and then you can, later on, you will learn how to add or create your own, but you can pick the material. Gold, it's not a very gold color. Glass, almost comes a little transparent, and you can keep going. Concrete, for instance, it's a small box. But you can pick the material if you want here, and it updates the properties behind the scenes. So utilizing that description and your physical, if you will, through iProperties, the physical information. Now let's set it back to steel. We can use steel cast. Hit apply. And you'll notice it will change up here as I click close. And there is your first part. Now, thing to be mindful of is Inventor doesn't have an auto save, so save often. And if I hit save, might notice in which folder it goes into, which is the one we set the project in. So I'm just going to leave this as part 1. Terrible naming, but I'm going to do it anyways. Save, and there's my part, my first part. Now, like I said, if you have your first box, and say I want to cut a square out of this one, for instance, I can click this surface, and you might notice you have sketch here, or you can click new sketch. Keep mind of the parentheses at the end. It says 2D sketch. And there's an S in there. So I hit S, and I'm going to click the surface. That is now my new drawing surface. And you might also notice it auto projects the center point up every time, which is really nice. Now I'm going to place a rectangle, and I'm just going to place it here. Just draw it out. Not going to put any dimensions on yet. Right click and say OK. I'm going to hit D for dimension, and this one 0.5, this one 0.5, and then I actually want to set it from the edge here, and you might notice it will, as I'm in the dimension tool, I can click this edge and this one, and what actually happens, it projects up this edge right here. And so I'm going to put 0.25. And just to kind of show you here, project geometry. And if I click on this surface, it's going to give me, and you notice they're yellow. That means they're projected over. And here's where I'm going to kind of show you in a little second here. I'm going to add another dimension this way from here to here and do 0.25. Now it's white, fully constrained. And this is because I tied this sketch to this solid, or this extrusion, if you will, which is again tied back to the center point. So this will give me fully constrained. Now, if I hit extrude, I can hit E from here actually. I can right click or click finish if I want to, or E, shortcut again, gets you right into the extrude command. Now you might notice it did not select my profile, and they did not select what surface I'm from, and we've got some other options right here. Now, I want to kind of point out the reason it didn't is because there's two profile options right now. It is, if I click this one, you notice what is light green. We're going to zoom in on it. Or it's this one. Now, this is because they both have solid boundaries, solid lines that make a boundary, if you will. And so I actually only wanted this one, but I needed to project up these edges to get the dimensions. So I can, of course, just click here, and naturally it wants to go out of the surface to create a new solid portion. Or if I go this way, it actually switches it and makes it a cut. It does it automatically. It understands what you're trying to do. Now, it may be that I didn't want that, and I'm just going to drag this here. You can do that as well, because I want the extension out the other end. Well, I should have put the sketch on the other side. Anyways, but I can also put this one here, put it to cut, and if I'm cutting, I don't want to put a distance. I just want to put through all. Cut it all the way through. I don't care what happens. And so with that, I can click OK. And we have a little hole. Now, I'm using my Shift key and my middle mouse button to rotate around, instead of this one over here. This one right here, there, and you can use your middle mouse button, and it kind of does the same thing. Now, this is where these functions here come in. If you click right here, you have a very nice way to kind of get your part going and coming, rotating it around. I can click and hold, and I can spin this around as however I want to. Now, look at, is a very nice one. Turns that surface right to you. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm actually going to show you here. If I wanted to delete this extrusion, I can right click on it and say delete. But I can delete the sketch. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to uncheck this one right here. And so this will be if you had other things, maybe they were further down in this end of part that also needed either to be deleted, or you don't want to. It'll have more options, but this is kind of just read it. So I'm going to hit OK. That leaves me my sketch, and I want to be a little better with my sketch. And this is again where these construction line comes in, because even though I projected them out, I can select them and just turn them into construction lines. They're just help lines. I can still dimension to them, no big deal. But what you notice, or you will notice, when I hit E for extrude, there is no question. That is my profile. That is the only profile. And if I let it go this way and I use my union instead of, or cut, well, it's going to be cut. Join, and we have a little piece of plate coming out. So you kind of build your parts as you go. You add to them this whole time. Now, there is a third option in here that is called intersect. And so let's just go, we're going to draw on this surface right here. I'm going to click it. I'm going to select the sketch and just going to draw a rectangle like that. And so again, I can dimension. I'm going to hit D. I'm going to go just a eighth of an inch from that one. I'm going to go, let's do 0.5 from that one. I'm going to go 125. And just to go 0.5 from that one. Now, I could, again, being diligent, go make this one construction lines. It wouldn't necessarily matter, because you might notice they don't make a full profile. It's open-ended, right? So I don't have to, but we can be diligent, do our proper work. I'm going to hit finish, and I'm going to go extrude, hit E, And if you can hover, you might see E is the extrude. And I'm actually going to use this one right here, which is called intersect. And what happens then is the only parts I'm left with is where these two, where this sketch, when I'm extruding it, what it intersects with from what's already there, the solids that are already there. So it's a kind of a way to especially if you have two different curved surfaces, if you will. One is curving one way and then the other way. And this is where intersect is very handy. And again, through all, well, it'll just go from this plane right here and as long as it needs to. And so I can click OK. Now, you might have noticed we got 3, 1, 3, and 4 extrusion. It's because we deleted one. Well, if I want to edit my first sketch, well, I can't see it. Well, it's hidden underneath this plus sign. I can double click that and I can go, this should be 1. This should be 0.75. Get my part centered for 1. I can make it, let's just go a little crazy, make it 3 inches. I can click finish, and you might notice that just made my box bigger because I changed the first sketch. I can go do the same for the second one. It's sitting up in the same corner because I'm going to click it because I dimensioned myself up to this corner. And then my extrusion 3, well, that just goes through. Now, if you wanted to kind of see, okay, what did I do up until this point? What was it like? You can take this end of part and just drag it up. That kind of hides this temporarily. If you needed something to happen before you did this one and you don't want to delete it, it's a way to do this. It's a little risky. It can break, but it usually works. So with that, we've kind of taken a deep dive into the extrude command. And so we'll take a look at the revolve here. All right, let's get moving on revolve here. And I'm just going to start a new part, and I can go new up here in the corner, new part, and it opens up in a new part. And with revolve, just like extrude, you need a sketch first. And this is where, again, I will expand my origin planes. Whichever one you want to click on, you can click it first and then pick your sketch. If I hit escape right now, I can hit sketch and it'll kind of show them for me. And I can click on the plane I want to do my initial sketch on. XY plane, a lot of people are familiar with that if you're coming from AutoCAD. And so when you do a revolve, you preferably want to do a center line. Now I'll just show you and be very, very simple. If I create a box, not even going to dimension at this point, I'm just going to click finish. I'm going to click revolve, and it doesn't understand what to do. That's because there's no defined center line, but it's asking for one, if you notice right here. So I can say this is my center line, and it does a revolve. And you can set angles and stuff. We'll get right back to that. Now, preferably, you'd want to be a little bit more, I would say, prepared for that. So I'll go back to my sketch. And the first thing I'm going to do is this bottom line, or maybe it's this one. Doesn't matter which one. Let's say I want this, it's a cylinder with a hole in the center. Well, I can draw a line, and might remember this construction lines or center line. Now I can draw the line in first. Just kind of hover so it becomes horizontal. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to select the line and click the center line. So the way that works is, and it's nice with dimensioning too, if I hit D for dimension and I go from this line to this line, you can see it gives me diameter. So let's do 0.25. This one to this one, and again Let's do 0.75. And then what you might also want to do is actually put this center line on the midpoint. And this is because, keeping in mind these origin planes that you have, they can be very useful later on in your extrusion or revolve for that matter. And it's a lot of help to know that they're there and how you can utilize them for your next sketches. So I'm actually going to take this center line. I'm just going to use the coincident constraint, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to actually grab, so I'm getting the center line, the center point of the center line, and putting that onto the center. That also helps me get my sketch fully constrained. Now, say I want this on the center line again, going this way. I could project in, if I wanted to, this axis, or I can utilize construction line. And so let me exaggerate a little bit. I'll drag it out to the side just to kind of show you how. So if I click a line and I make it a construction line, I could, go from the center point, and I can go up, and I can just kind of hover the line, cover it, and you'll see when it turns green, that means I'm on the center point. So that is sitting, and it may look a little strange right now, but I'm going to use perpendicular between this one and this one. That sets my box, so whatever I do, it grows out of the center line. And this is, again, to keep these work planes in the middle of my cylinder, if you will. Now I'm going to hit D for dimension and set the width. Just do 0.25 like so. And now if I hit finish, or R is the shortcut for revolve, but revolve, and you might see now it already figured everything out because it recognizes the center line. There's only one profile, and that is what you want. So it figures out your profile, and it figures out your axis. Now you can go, and I'm going one direction, but let's say if I wanted to go 90 degrees, I can do that. And this is one way, call it the other way, halfway between, and then these are kind of similar as the extrude was. You got two different distances. I can do 90 degree one way and 45 degrees the other way. And so might be, yes, I'm going to go full. I'm going to say 360, and I have a full circle. Now with that, I'm going to say okay. So again, I'm going to point out this extrusions, these here lines, keeping these in the center of your, and it depends on what you're going to do, of course, but it is to keep them in the back of your head for what's my next step. And say I could have cut it out right away, of course, but I want to cut out a groove on the outside. I'm going to just do it in 2 revolutions just to show. So now I can utilize these planes. So I'm going to click the XY again, or let's go with this one for instance, and I'm going to click the sketch symbol. My part orients, and I can start to draw. And let's just we're going to do something out here. And this is a little tricky because, wait a minute, what happened to half of it? Do F7. And I will actually rotate just so you can see what's going on. Now, if I go like this, you will see that I've cut away. If I hit F7 again, I'm cutting away what's between me and the sketch plane. So F7 is a nice little thing to keep in mind, especially as you're working, I want to say, inside of something else. And so now I can repeat myself. I want to do my center line, click center line, and maybe we want to kind of look directly at it. I'm just going to place it like this. Doesn't really matter. I don't have to go out from the center. I just need to place it. I can dimension it again. Let's go here, 0.5. Well, let's just do the width of this, 0.2. I just want to make sure I'm outside, and I'm going to do the same. I can actually use this, let's see, horizontal, no, the other one. Look at the purple line. That's going to give you what you want. So it's not necessarily, it might seem a little intuitive. I'm using vertical, but it looks horizontal. Just pay attention to that. This help line, this purple one in my case. From center of that to center of this one. That does the same thing as the construction line we did before. So if I hit D again, dimension this 0.125. Now I can kind of repeat myself. I'll do finish, or if I hit R for revolve, it's going to understand again what I'm trying to do. And now we've got call it the same options as we had before with extrude. On the second revolve or extrude, you're going to have the same options for cut, and you can see what happens, or the intersect, which just leaves you with whatever the two objects have combined. Now I'm just going to cut out, and we'll go 180, just half of it, for instance, just to do something. And I'll click OK. I'm using Shift and my middle mouse button to rotate this around. So now we've got a cutout of this piece right here. And so you have the same, like I said, the same options, and you have the same functionality going, expanding this one, editing the first sketch, just double click it, back on my first sketch. Let's say I go 1.5, just exaggerate, making bigger. When I hit finish, wait a minute, what happened to my second one? Well, it's actually still in here, but now it's not big enough, right? So I can edit that as well. And I can tell, again, remember F7? Okay, this needs to be like, let's just again exaggerate, using 2 inches. This is excessive, I'm aware. We can do 1 inch. Or you could potentially project out this outer edge if you wanted to. That works just as well. And so dimension yourself above it. But you have the same capabilities as extrude. You can go back and edit your sketches as you go along. Now we have our little circular thing, our cylinder, especially with the center lines. And so I'm just gonna scoot over here a little bit. This might not be, I dare say, one of the things where you quite often will see revolve is like typical shafts, right? And I just wanted to kind of draw one out. So if you start, I'm gonna go, I've got some different thicknesses and whatever not. This is where I dare say your sketches might get a little complex. And it's gonna be hollow in there for a little bit, and I'm gonna focus myself around the midpoint. Let's just, well, we can do the same thing over here, like so, and there we go. So I'm gonna again use, let me use vertical. No, I'm not. This one and this line, this point right here, just to set that center line. I'm gonna select it, make it a center line, and then you're gonna start dimensioning from this one. So the whole of this, I'm not gonna change the numbers right now. I'm just gonna let it go. Should you find yourself where this doesn't pop up, if you right click when you hit the dimension tool, the one you want to look for is edit dimension. This one right here. Make sure this is checked off. If you don't, and I unchecked it right now, if I go, it's just gonna move on. So right click, make sure there's a checkbox. And then you just continue going, and you kind of catch my drift. Check your boxes like so. And this way you kind of get more so route to go. And if I hit revolve or R, it's going to understand, and it's going to kind of remember what I did last time. I did 180. You can click here and just say full. That goes 360. And so this is just a little bit more of a complex sketch, but it gives you a pretty complex figure. Now, I used shift and my middle mouse button to orbit. I can just as easily use the view cube up here, or I can add the orbit and drag it inside. I can rotate this around just however you want to. Hit escape to get out of it. Now with revolve, and again I can put extrusions up on here however I want to, but as you might have something revolved, and let's just get rid of this. Right click and delete it. Yes, you can delete the sketch as well. Now I'm gonna hit save on this just to not lose it. Keep in mind Inventor doesn't have an auto save, so you want to make sure that you save often. There's a save reminder. So once you have your part right here, and say I wanted some holes in this. Now, and this goes again for the boxes and extrusions, whatever. You have a hole here, hole command. Now this works a couple of different ways. And what you want to do is, if you have, let's go back to our little rectangle to show the first one, because you might only want one hole. Click the hole command and it's going to ask me for a position. Select position. So if I select the surface, it's going to give me a gigantic hole. Again, it just kind of remembers what you did last time. And so I'm going to do, just put it at 0.25 so it's not so excessively big. You might see down here you've got some different options. But so if I click on this here, I'm going to set a dimension to that 0.25, and then I'm going to click this one to set the other one 0.375, just to put dimensions on it. And again, this hole, I'm just going to push it straight through. This one right here, if I put a distance on it, I can kind of control either with a number, or again, shift middle mouse button to pan. I can kind of drag this up or down to see how far I want the hole to be. Now, or I can go again, like I said, straight through. Now I'm going to hit OK. This is one hole, and again, fully customizable. You can double click this sketch that actually automatically gets created, and you might want to pay attention to this center point, which you may have noticed is in our sketch functions, if you will. So I'm going to hit finish. I didn't change any numbers, and I'm going to go back to my second part. Now say I wanted 3 holes down here underneath somewhere. So I'm actually going to click this surface and I'm going to click a sketch, and I'm going to make a circle out of this center point and just kind of drag it out. We can do 0.75. Maybe that's not enough. Let's do 0.875, something like that. And this right now, it's a normal line, if you will. I'm going to actually click on it and make it a construction line. I want to make it very clear to myself and people coming behind me, this is here to help me do something. So what I'm going to do right now is this point, and I'm just going to place one. I'm going to do one at the bottom and one right here. So I got 3 points, and what I can do is actually again use the this horizontal constraint. Again, it's a little odd. Why am I doing horizontal? But just to pay attention to the purple line. So I'm going to set this bottom one and this one perpendicular to each other. And you might notice this, the point went white. Now I can set a distance, for instance, between these two that way, or I can actually right click and say align to get the distance between them. But if I wanted to set a degree, I kind of got to do another help line, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to start a line, and I'm going to go over and make it a construction line before I even start to draw it. And it's simply a line that as I'm on this and it turns green, I know I'm on the center point. From that one to center, and I'm going to go out to the other one as well, like so. Now, because of this, I can set a degree between the two. And I want to do one down here as well. Let's make another one. And notice this is still on actually. So that's something you got to watch out for too. Between that one and this one. And notice that already is white because it's fully defined. This is set. And so now if I do my dimension between that one and that one, let's just do 60 degrees. That turned white. I can go from that one to that one and say 120. And I want to click OK. And so if I click finish now, you will see you have a sketch, and it's white on white. A sketch with 3 work points. So if I hit the hole command, it actually automatically understands you want holes here on all 3. So I can change the number out here in this dialog box, or actually just right here, depends on all your preference. Let's do 125. And I'm going to cut them all the way through. So when you want multiple holes and in a pattern or in a following a sketch pattern, I guess you could call it, you can make that with these 3 work points. And again, this comes back and it's fully customizable. Now I'm going to show you just one more, because if I click hole and I click this surface, and then I haven't placed it yet, but I click this outer edge, it's gonna understand they're gonna be concentric. Now I'm cutting a hole in an empty space. I'm gonna go, let's just make it 0.5 so that is bigger, so that it does cut. But I'm only gonna go, let's just go down. Let's go, I'm going to do a flat bottom. Notice this as well, flat. And so I'm only going to go about halfway through. I'm going to click OK. And so there I've got a hole that kind of cuts into this as a certain distance. But it's very convenient if you're going to put a hole down something cylindrical. So you might have, considered that when you did your sketch. Not even bother with the center point of it. Just use the hole command after. It's just 2 ways to the same place. In this case, I needed a bigger hole after the fact. So, and again, you can come back. You can edit these. And I kind of want to point out just a couple little things that you can also do with a hole. And the main thing is you can put threads on it. Threads, and it's ANSI 1/4 inch or 1/4 UNC. I'm not going to do much. But you've got a bunch of different isometric, iso pipe threads, and so on. So you can get threads on these. I'm not going to do anything crazy here. I'm just going to click OK. And you might notice now it looks like threads. It's pictorial, but it is very representative of this is what it's threads through a hole. And so it's very nice that you can do that in the same command. And so once you've got your holes, your center lines and stuff, it is just a matter of continuing to make different things. Say I wanted a handle on this, start a new sketch, place, maybe it's a cylinder in this case. I'm just going to dimension it. There, 0.125. I'm just going to go a certain distance from that circle to this center point, 0.5. And it's looking for, so if you're ever wondering what are you looking for, it says 1 dimension is needed down in the right corner, down here in the corner. And so try to kind of click it, drag it, see what happens, see which way you can go with it. Well, it's the horizontal or vertical. So that, or you draw a construction line or a help line or whatever you want to do. Gets it fully constrained. I use E for extrude. Now I'm going to go just 1/4 of an inch. Say this is a handle. However you want to go. It's just a matter of adding sketches, adding features, cutting away, adding, subtracting, however you want to call it, to get to the part you want. But I want to emphasize something I said in the beginning, to make your first sketch as simple as possible and build on it. Make multiple extrusions and whatever not. And also it's a nice, I'm just going to do, so if I do a sketch and I didn't need that one, I'm going to hit finish and you go, I'm going to do one here. I need that one, so I'm going to do something there. Just, I'm going to go very brutally here. I'm going to go extrude. Yeah, that's fine. Now, so what I'm kind of getting at is here, you'll have dead sketches that you didn't use. And my point is to keep your browser as clean as possible. So this sketch right here, I did not need it. Go ahead and delete it. Extrusion, I did not need this one either, so I'm going to delete that one too. And yes, I can take the sketch with me. So keeping these browsers pretty clean. And also if you find yourself in especially parts you keep reusing for whatever reason you might want to, you can rename these extrusions if you want to. Give them specific names. So the main box, or go to this one, the main cylinder, the cutout, whatever you want to call it. Now, these are always things that are, that's really smart to say, to do ahead of time, but it is a way to kind of keep your parts nice and workable. And this tree can grow pretty quickly as you get more and more features on and more items on, if you will, more and more, like all these other functions you can use. So naming things is a good idea, and it helps you a lot in the long run. Now, if you go, and I kind of showed you the end of part, dragging this up removes the different extrusions, right? But there might be times when, you know what, I'm not going to use these holes. You can right click on it and you can suppress it. Suppress feature. That kind of takes it away. So that you can now have the same part, maybe use it in multiple locations, or save, maybe it's just to save another copy and you didn't want these holes. I want to kind of point out too, if you had this part right here, and let's hit save. Or here, let's save as part 3. There we go. Save. Now open. Of course, I've got. So there's my part 1, 3, and reopen part 2. There we go. Now we got all 3 of them. So for both of these now, I've just suppressed, and you can't even tell the difference. Let's rotate this one around. Here, let's actually do side by side. So I got all my 3 components, whichever one's most active. So this is number 3 and this is number 2. So on number 2, I'm going to unsuppress, right click, unsuppress the feature. But say on part 3, I actually didn't want it at all. I'm going to delete it. But then you might get a question, do you want to delete the sketch? Yes, I do. And if there were other parts that happened after this that were depending on that sketch, it would ask you to delete those as well. I'm just going to say, okay, didn't have that issue this time. So with that, you can kind of create your own. And again, this is, you start with the part, you make the part, and then you're going to have something that's very similar. Copy it. And this is again where the naming comes in. Name your extrusions, name your sketches. Just makes it easier to work with once you're done. And so that kind of takes us through the revolve command and the hole command. And so that's it for now.
So that was the Autodesk Inventor beginner tutorial series. If you want to get a certificate of completion for finishing this series, then sign up for the completely free Autodesk Inventor Essentials course using the link here and also in the pinned comment. Also, let me know what you want to learn next in the comments down below, and I'll make that video for you. Take care, have a great day.